All right, so the question is talking about when we view or employ the various types of power. So some of the ones that resonated with me and my experience. So like with expert of power. So I actually work with Pepsi, and so the time when I've used expert of power is so I've actually worked for the company for over 10 years. So a lot of people when they come, they start working with the company, and I'm looked to as their leader. So I use my 10 years of experience within the company.
I know he's running.
I was gonna say.
And then if you look at another one, so like
Uh-oh.
information of power. So like when I deal with my customers, so I take like insights that I have that from our research, and I kind of use that as a way to reflect power with my access to information. And then I think the last one is so reward power. So like with dealing with people who actually work directly for me. So we implement bonus structures to and so that kind of that sense of reward for them is another thing that resonates with me as well.
Did you see the benefits and cost table in the book when you did reading? I really liked it. Something that was really interesting when I was looking at reward power was the cost of it, because I immediately thought like, oh yeah, bonus structure, right? We have the similar thing at Starbucks, and I thought that would be pretty useful. But some of the costs that are listed there are pretty interesting. So like lower task satisfaction than with expert and referent power. So I know you talked a little bit about expert power and kind of mixing them together, but I didn't really consider all the negatives. There's like 6 negative or like cost to reward power. I found it interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Like I said, I didn't get to read the chapters yet because I've been traveling. But just as far as using the expert power, I've been with, same thing. I've been with Starbucks for so long. And even though I stepped down recently, I'm still like such a source of knowledge for people, and they still utilize me like as that, expert of power. And it's a really weird kind of like sensation.
Yeah, to have expert power but not have like legitimate power or positional power. That's an interesting juxtaposition. Awesome. Zach, do you want to share?
I guess I sort of go along the same vein. I have some legitimate power because I'm a shift supervisor, but as far as what I actually use, it would be more towards reward power and expert power.
I don't know why when you were walking down the hall, I just thought of that. It's like, oh my God,
because I'm constantly trying to build relationships
with
partners because of how often that turnover happens. I've been with the company for 2.5 years. I've probably worked with 30, 40 different baristas since I've been working there, and normally there's only 12. Well, at one point, at one store, I only had 15 people employed there.
Jeez.
So I probably ended up working with about 25. We had like 10 new people come in. So with that happening, I constantly had to rely on reward power because I'm trying to build relationships with people. And if you depend on coercive power, then you end up just destroying any kind of relationship chance that you might have with the people that you work with. And sort of recently, after I've been working with the company for a while, then I sort of have expert power. I've kind of like deferred to a lot about questions and things on the floor. If customers have questions, they'll come to me and ask. So just that really, nothing crazy. Shift supervisors don't have that much legitimate power anyway.
Yeah, they're like a glorified barista, as I say.
Yeah, basically.
So
with a lot more responsibility.
Oh, yeah, you just get in trouble.
So your perspective on coercive power kind of opposite of mine. When I was reading it, I felt like it was a really negative thing. And that's kind of the connotation that coercive power has. But it has its pluses too. And so coercive power, although it can like ruin relationships, I think kind of goes hand in hand. There are some times, for instance, when a partner is late, for example, and I've asked, them, they know the standard, they need to be on time, and they're not on time. Coercive power is basically a corrective action. For Ryan, who doesn't know, a corrective action is like a disciplinary action, but it's focused on like what an employee should do rather than what they have been doing wrong, right? So if someone's late, I would say they need to be on time rather than this person was late. So I feel like coercive power, when used in the right context and to the right extent, right? If I only use coercive power, absolutely, it's not going to work. But if I only use more power, it's also not going to work. So I think it's kind of a mixture of both, in my role at least. I too chose legitimate power, but my perspective is, I think, a little bit different than your guys's or what you've shared so far. So for me, having legitimate power as a store manager oftentimes works against me, because partners won't challenge me if they have like a better idea, or if they think that I'm wrong, they'll just kind of let me continue to do it because I have this legitimate power and I'm the boss and they can't say anything. And so it takes true legitimate effort to create like a problem-solving environment and an empowering environment rather than just whatever Nicole says goes.
Right.
So, for example, I just recently started in a new store 3 weeks ago, and I had this idea that worked in a previous store about labeling breakfast sandwiches for expiration date. Well, the store that I'm now in does double the amount of breakfast sandwiches in my previous one, and so this idea that I had, which I thought was brilliant, doesn't actually work at this store, but it took them like 2 weeks for them to say, "Nicole, this doesn't actually work."
Yeah.
All because I have power. Yeah, exactly.
That's an interesting take for sure, because you want to, I think people assume like when you see like legitimate power, especially when you're not in such a high management position, you're like, oh, like this is great. That means that these people have to respect me. But it is interesting because it doesn't always, like you said, create the best atmosphere when people, you're not problem solving. You're not like being able to be like questioned and stuff because people are too scared when they don't have to be.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Okay, so do we want to answer the other question on cultural differences?
Yeah, what was it?
So the question is, discuss ways in which cultural difference may influence the way we interact with leaders and employ power.
So my take on this part, I think the big one that kind of resonates most is the hierarchy within with different cultures, especially when you're dealing with leaders and like a sense of like power. So how some cultures really view where they have that hierarchy, a difference in hierarchy. And I've always kind of where I guess maybe my culture, my background, where I come from, is that yes, I do respect hierarchy, but it's not as much as, let's say, like some Asian cultures or.
Right.
So I think to me that was like the big takeaway on that.
Yeah. I think in cultures too, it's a little bit different, especially you bring up like high context and low context cultures.
That's what I was going to say.
In Asian cultures, like a lot of it's based on tenure. So somebody may be brilliant, but they may be in their first year at that job, and so they're not going to be in charge of anyone. And someone who may have been there 40 years, who maybe isn't amazing at the job, still gets that position, that power, because of their culture. So absolutely.
Totally. Well, also the high and the low, it totally affects the way in which, you communicate. So you could be, you could come off completely overwhelming to someone because you're like all uppity and looking at them in the eye and whatever else. And then, another leader would be really, be like uncomfortable with it and stuff. And other leaders will love it and be like, this person's awesome. So you have to take in those like differences like that.
Absolutely. Zach, what's your opinion on culture and power?
I don't. I don't have a lot of experience with different cultures. The only real experience that I have with this would only be differences like with northern culture and southern culture. Living in Philadelphia now and coming from Kentucky, there is a little bit of a difference between how those cultures will interact with people in powerful positions. I find that in the North, it's a lot easier to approach someone in a power position. Weirdly, if you're in the South, then a lot of times it's sort of like an Asian culture in that it's a family affair, and often they've been in a position of power. Their family's been in a position of power for a very long time. And so if you come from a background that's not as affluent as theirs, or well known as theirs, or has sometimes I think it's funny, it's almost like it's an honor culture, but if you don't have the good name that their family has, then it's very hard to assert any kind of power or communication with someone from that kind of background.
Yeah.
I luckily came from a family that had a good name where I was from. But the way that my family,
you're still welcome to come back.
Yeah, but the way my family interacted with other families, like we wouldn't, not me personally, but some of my family members wouldn't be associated with other families because they weren't
good enough.
They weren't good enough, no. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. I moved from like the West Coast to the East Coast was like a huge transition, just like you said, like in the way that people communicate with one another. So I worked at a store back home, and then I came to a store in Brooklyn. And even like the first day on the floor, like listening to the way that some of the baristas talked, like even to the customers, and it was like, you know, I was like, you're so dry, you're not smiling, like how do they know that you're not like yelling at them, you know? But I just realized, you know, I realized more and more, like everywhere I went, like if I went shopping in Brooklyn or I went to, you know, I'm like, oh, like that's just how customer service is here. Like people are just kind of nasty, and it's like, it's so weird, but it's like, you know, I go home and everyone's like all happy and hello, and you know, you greet people when they walk in. And I know, you know, I know that's true in like the South and like the Midwest and stuff. And then you go to like these like big cities and people are just like ignoring you, or they just like give you a nasty look when you need help. And you're like, you work here. Just tell me where the razors are, man.
Awesome. So in my opinion, culture differences impact the way we interact with leaders because our culture influences our decisions and kind of who we are, which is what you guys basically explained. So the example that I have for this is that I had a boss previously, just retired from the Navy, and he came in and spent 2 months training and learning Starbucks culture coming from the Navy. He was used to being in charge of people who were self-motivated and knew exactly what they needed to do. And then when he became a district manager and was in charge of 12 to 15 store managers that didn't all go in the same direction or have the same capabilities, he really struggled to kind of adjust to that. He just expected people to be self-motivated and to execute what he asked them to do. So there was less follow-up than I could as a previous boss had provided, and I think that really came down to that culture. He had 20 plus Navy where he didn't have to follow up on somebody because he knew that they were just going to do it because that's the culture of the Navy, versus at a for-profit corporation where I can only work 40 hours a week. I'm here in California. I can only get so much done. So